My family has a gruesome history. I know I will be next. The genealogy book sits heavy in my hands, its leather binding cracked and brittle, smelling of dust and something else, something older, something that reminds me of dried blood and forgotten screams. My name is Jonas Rivington. I am the last. The morning light filters through the curtains of our modest suburban home, casting long shadows across the worn hardwood floors. Ivy is in the kitchen, her pregnant belly a gentle curve against her pale blue nightgown. She's humming something, a lullaby. Perhaps completely unaware of the weight of history that pulses through my veins. I should have told her before we married, before we conceived our child. Each generation lost someone, always in ways that made local newspapers fall silent, that made police investigations mysteriously go cold, that made even hardened investigators look away and shake their heads. But how do you explain a hereditary nightmare that defies rational explanation?
Breakfast is ready, love.
The eggs grow cold on my plate. Ivy watches me, her green eyes searching, a furrow of concern creasing her forehead. She knows something's wrong. She's always known how to read the subtle tremors in my silence.
You're thinking about your family again.
Just tired.
Tell me about your great-grandfather.
There's nothing to tell.
Abel Rivington, the first documented instance of our family's peculiarity. He was a cartographer, always traveling to remote locations, mapping territories no one had ever charted. His journals, the few that survived, spoke of places that didn't exist on any official map. Places with geometries that didn't make sense. Landscapes that seemed to breathe.
Jonas, are you listening?
I'm fine.
The ultrasound images are wrong. Not obviously so. Not in a way that would alarm a typical doctor or technician. But I see it. The subtle asymmetries, the impossible angles, the way the fetus's bones seem to bend in directions that shouldn't be anatomically possible. Ivy keeps the images pinned to our refrigerator, a proud mother-to-be displaying her first glimpses of our unborn child. Each time I look, I feel something crawl beneath my skin. Something ancient, something watching Dr. Helena Reyes as our obstetrician. She's been nothing but professional, but I've caught her looking at me, not at Ivy, at me. Her eyes hold a recognition that makes my blood run cold. That night, I pulled out the old family documents again. Tucked between brittle pages of the genealogy book, I found a letter. The paper was so old it crumbled at the edges, but the ink remained sharp. I traced my birthmark again. Under the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window, it looks less like a birthmark and more like a map. A map to nowhere, or everywhere. The baby kicks hard, so hard that Ivy doesn't wake up till I see her stomach shape pressing out. Not like a normal fetal movement, more like something trying to push its way out. Our child is coming to push its way out. Our child is coming, and I am terrified of what will arrive. The old courthouse record sits spread across my desk, a constellation of pain mapped out in faded ink and brittle paper. I've been researching our family history for weeks now, driven by something more than curiosity, something closer to survival. Every Rivington male in the last 5 generations died or disappeared before their 35th birthday. Not a coincidence. Not anymore. I've collected newspaper clippings, court documents, medical records, not the dramatic, sensational evidence one might expect, but the quiet, bureaucratic trail of destruction. Police reports with missing pages, coroner's files with critical information redacted, insurance claims that never quite add up.
The baby's room is almost ready.
I look up. The nursery door stands open. Pale yellow walls, carefully selected furniture. Everything perfect. Too perfect. Too perfect. Too perfect.
Have you ever wondered why some families seem marked by tragedy?
Some people are just unlucky.
But I know it's more than luck. Something runs in our blood. Something that doesn't care about love or hope or the carefully constructed life we've built. The birthmark on my wrist throbs. Not painfully, just present. A constant reminder. I pull out the most disturbing document. A psychological evaluation of my grandfather Ezekiel, conducted 2 months before his disappearance. The psychiatrist's notes are clinical, detached. Patient exhibits extreme paranoia regarding familial curse. Demonstrates intricate delusion of systematic family destruction. Fixates on biological determinism. Shows no signs of schizophrenia, but persistent ideation of inherited trauma suggests deep-seated psychological mechanisms at play. Inherited trauma. The words echo. What if our family's destruction wasn't supernatural? What if it was something more insidious? A genetic predisposition to self-destruction, a psychological pattern so deeply ingrained that each generation unconsciously recreates the same narrative of loss.
Coming to bed?
I nod, but my mind is elsewhere, calculating. The baby is due in 6 weeks. I have 6 weeks to understand what's happening to our family. 6 weeks to break a cycle that has consumed generations. 6 weeks to save our child, if I can. The research consumes me. I've taken a leave of absence from work. My entire study transformed into a makeshift investigation center. Genetic reports, psychiatric evaluations, family medical histories stretching back over a century. Each document another piece of a horrifying puzzle. Dr. Helena Reyes agrees to meet me privately. She's a geneticist specializing in inherited psychological disorders, recommended by a colleague who knew something was unusual about my family history.
The Rivington family presents a fascinating case study. Generational patterns of self-destructive behavior, early mortality, and what appears to be a consistent psychological profile.
What profile?
Extreme risk-taking behavior, persistent paranoia, a documented inability to form long-term emotional connections. Each generation seems to unconsciously recreate traumatic family dynamics.
My grandfather Ezekiel, my father Gideon. Their lives were a series of broken relationships, isolated existences, careers marked by sudden, inexplicable failures. And me. I'd fought against that pattern, married Ivy, built a stable life.
There's something else. We've identified a rare genetic mutation, not something that causes a specific disease, but a variation that affects neural pathways related to threat perception and stress response. In simplest terms, your family's brain chemistry is fundamentally different. You're neurologically primed for a perpetual state of threat detection. Imagine living with the constant sensation that something terrible is about to happen. Every single moment.
I know that feeling intimately. The contractions started at 3:17 a.m. Ivy's grip on my hand was vice-like, her breathing controlled despite the pain. Dr. Reyes was there. Not our usual obstetrician, but the geneticist who had been studying our case. Her presence felt deliberate, calculated.
Everything is progressing normally.
Hours passed. The rhythmic beep of monitors, the soft rustle of medical equipment. My mind kept circling back to the research, the genetic markers, the documented family history of destruction. At 11:42 a.m., our son was born. A healthy cry pierced the sterile hospital air. Normal, perfectly, wonderfully normal. Dr. Reyes ran her standard tests, blood work, genetic screening. I watched, my entire body tense, waiting for some sign of the curse that had haunted my family for generations. Nothing. Weeks turned into months. Our son, Oliver, grew strong, healthy. No signs of the psychological fractures that had destroyed my father, my grandfather, our ancestors. I submitted every piece of medical documentation to Dr. Reyes, comprehensive reports, psychological evaluations. Each document a testament to Oliver's complete normalcy.
The genetic markers, the predisposition to self-destruction?
Sometimes, breaking a cycle is possible, not through supernatural intervention, but through understanding, through choice.
Ivy found me one night surrounded by the old family documents, the genealogy book, the newspaper clippings, the medical records that had consumed me for so long.
Are you ready?
I understood what she meant. That night, I built a fire in our backyard, watched the papers curl and burn. The history of destruction, the weight of inherited trauma, turning to ash. Oliver played nearby, laughing, innocent, unaware of the darkness I was burning away. For the first time in generations, a Rivington male would live, truly live. The curse was over.